it is a little strange because it's probably an area that Bungie is receiving probably the most backlash, and there are the most complaints and criticism, and valid criticism. Is not all just needless whining. Like, it's very valid people, from a lot of people that are very reasonable. Like, obviously, people that love to complain, but there's a lot of people who have people like True Vanguard, who is very reasonable and very fair, very nice guy. He's not a toxic person, but he makes a lot of very valid points about just like, this just doesn't really work. And there's a lot of people who are making very valid points, and Bungie are being very quiet. Consider like they've been faster to react to things that have been much less of a deal. I'll put it that way, if that makes sense. And for the amount of constant backlash they're getting for Stasis since it launched, they haven't said a whole lot. And even they've said now, like I saw one of the developers say, like they've noted it seems a bit too strong. They're working on dialing it back, but it doesn't seem like they have the urgency that I think the community has. It seems like Bungie's like, we'll get to it, we're going to tune it, but the community's like, no, you need to do something now. Like this, you need to do something yesterday, last month, back at like this is bad.
Yeah,
but
and worse than that too. It's one of these things of the longer they leave it, the more compounded the problem gets. So I mean, Bleak Watcher, the Warlock aspect that gives you stasis turrets, is now disabled because it's one of these things that gave you a bug for infinite roaming super, admittedly without any damage resistance, but still roaming super and roaming stasis super. So not great. But that was an aspect that was added last season, and we just got 3 new ones, and people have only just started working with these and using them. But not only are they potentially a harvest for things like bugs that might eventually end up getting them disabled in the game, but also it's one of these really terrifying moments where you sit there and realize that there's going to be power creep with every single one of these that is going to be unforeseen and harder to balance with every single iteration.
Yep.
So I mean, it's not the most ridiculously overpowered one. I know that everyone's going to be mentioning the Hunter one because, more terrifying grenades is scary. But when it comes down to something as simple as the Warlock one, that gives you a ton more melee energy in things like the Crucible. It's basically their equivalent of Grim Harvest on Hunter. And that's actually way stronger than people realize because the Warlock melee is already a direct freeze. It's really strong. It can counter a super if you get the timing right. So you've got really powerful tools here, which admittedly feel great in PvE. Like, never remove these things from PvE. Yeah. As always, it's really fantastic. But when you look at their impact on PvP, it's going to be even harder for everyone at Bungie to nerf those things appropriately down the line because the sandbox is expanding at such a rate that they can't possibly take it all into account, given the player feedback from each of these. So
yeah, exactly right.
It's going to be real tough, It's going to be a really hard one to even see what this looks like in a few years' time. Because, they're going to have to do a serious group of nerfs. I anticipate there'll be even more aspects coming to Stasis next season. I have a feeling that that's going to be one of the big selling points again, because it's another Beyond Light season. And, they appear to have done this with every season coming in. So, there's a lot going on. And I would not be surprised whatsoever if this becomes a problem that persists all the way into next season and potentially into Witch Queen. And that's, man, PvPers are having a rough time right now.
Yeah, that's you can say that again. Yeah, that's a very good point because it's kind of like a couple steps forward, couple steps back. I think it was, the beginning of Season of Chosen where they did nerf. When exactly did they do the big nerf to Stasis? Beginning of Season of Chosen?
I think so. Yeah, yes.
So they did that. Season of Chosen. But then they also added some fragments and aspects that are powerful in other ways. Like you said, the stasis turret. It's like, we've nerfed stasis, but now here's a stasis turret. So it's like...
Right. Here's that obnoxious Titan melee that lets them instantly freeze people.
So it's like they'll might nerf stasis in some ways, and then they'll go and add some aspects, which just, again, and you got to have playtesters and balances and make sure there's no bugs and things broken. Just the difference between bugs and things being overpowered, you got both of those risks. And you're adding these new aspects, and it's like, I know it gets even more complicated for them to balance because they're trying to keep it balanced while also adding other things that are supposed to be powerful. And if they're adding aspects that aren't good, they've got to make them powerful and useful in order for them to be worthwhile, and obviously the development time that goes into making them. But then also they're kind of just adding more fuel to the fire that is stasis, which is just the main root of the problem. But Yeah, as you said, it's is if we're going to keep on getting more aspects and fragments, then it's probably going to continue. And I don't.
Oh yeah, and we've been talking about aspects so much. Fragments. I'm not going to go on this one for too long, but yeah, the new fragments mean that when you get your melee shards from all the different classes, you can pull them into you by just being near them as though they're noble rounds, and they can give you overshield. So
That's
yeah,
what I mean.
no,
It's just like
yeah, it doesn't end. You know, like there's so much. It's just yeah, it's endless.
yeah, it's a messy one. I feel for all the PvPers, but at the same time, I do think it's become quite painfully obvious that Bungie isn't intending for Crucible to be super competitive and balanced and serious. It's kind of meant to be a bit like Mario Kart. Just don't take it too seriously or competitively. You know, there's random, there's RNG, there's, I guess it's not massive RNG. There's just lots of skill imbalances, and the skill gap, like the skill ceiling in one aspect is really high because there are people that have been playing the game for 7 years that just can do ridiculous things, especially on mouse and keyboard, that can do ridiculous things that some new players would be like, how did he just jump over my head and just freeze me and just kill me in one shot? But then there's also elements that are just, I don't know. It's yeah, it's a messy one. I don't every time I think about it, it's just like because they're clearly not trying to make Crucible super balanced and super serious the way I think a lot of people want to take it. And it's hard to kind of say, oh, just don't take Crucible so seriously, because it does have a lot of potential. Like Destiny Crucible is still amazing. It's still a fantastic sandbox, but it's so full with so many things. It's just getting messy to the point where it's just like, there's just blue shells everywhere, and it's just kind of like, you just kind of can't really, you can't really take it seriously. I think I've seen that sentiment a lot. A lot of people are saying that just, you just can't take it too seriously, because if you do, you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment, because Bungie clearly doesn't want it to be, PvP. I guess the benefit of this is that PvE is shining. PvE is in a very good spot. The mods, the builds, the abilities, as we always say, Stasis is amazing in PvE. But it does seem like, I guess in the past, PvE would suffer quite a lot at the expense of PvP, but now it's kind of the reverse. And now Bungie's like,
now they can
like.
It's a weird one too, because it suffers in reverse, but also they have shown that they can split the sandbox balancing by keeping Stasis powerful in PvE, but also having some target nerfs that only affect PvP.
Yeah.
So it's a weird mix of the two,